Hey, good morning, everybody. Yes, it's a little chilly out here today. It's a beautiful, brisk morning here, though, in Lake Tahoe, California, and I am sitting here enjoying this day on this NEWOPDAY. What is this, May 23rd, 2016. Welcome to the Wholesale Real Estate Investing number 260 by SAHA. Yes, there are 259 more of these out there on YouTube for you to get great information from. As in every negotiation NEWOP day, we are talking and discussing the Dale Carnegie How to Win Friends and Influence People book. We are in, we're in part 3, which is how to win people into your way of thinking. Why do you think we're studying this book? Wholesale real estate, and we're studying how to win friends and influence people. How to win people over into your way of thinking. Isn't your way of thinking when you want to buy a house from somebody a good position to get a seller into? I would think so, absolutely. So chapter 6 here is called The Safety Valve in Handling Complaints. And I'm not even going to go back through these because, let's see, wait a second. The first one is you can't win an argument. The second one is a sure way of making enemy. I'm sorry, let me do this better. The first principle is the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. Chapter 2 is all about show respect for the other person's opinions. Never tell them they are wrong. Number 3 is when you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Number 4 is begin in a friendly way. And number 5 is get the other person saying yes, yes, immediately. And now number 6 here, the safety valve in handling complaints. Well, I'm going to save the principle for the end. I'm going to start out by saying that the biggest mistake that people make in trying to win people over into their way of thinking, what do you think that is? It's that they do all the talking. People don't care what you think until they know that you care about them. And they understand and they feel that you care about them when you let them talk and let them, you know, answer their own questions. And that's what this is all about. The secret is obviously to let them talk themselves out. Listen intensely while they are talking themselves out. You want to be listening intently and sincerely. You want to encourage them to express their ideas fully. You're going to do that by asking questions. From you listening intently, hearing what they're actually saying, hearing what their objections are, what their problems are, what their questions are, and encouraging them to express that idea fully, get it all out by asking more questions based on what they've just said. Then you're going to let them tell you a thing or two, you know, let them do their complaining, let them do their bitching and moaning, let them do all those things. Not a problem. And no matter what, no matter how much you want to, because you're going to want to, they're going to be saying things that you're going to want to jump in and get your point across and do all those things. Do not interrupt them. Let them talk it out in their own mind and discuss in their own head and rationalize the solutions for themselves and talk themselves into your way of thinking. Because if you interrupt them, if you interrupt their thinking and their thoughts, they're not going to pay any attention to what you're saying because, you know, they still have so many thoughts and ideas of their own in their own head just screaming to get out. They're not even going to hear what you're saying because they're still thinking about where you cut them off. You know, if they're in the middle of something and they're explaining a problem or a question or a doubt or a fear or something that they have, and you interrupt that to get your opinion out, or to try to change their mind on whatever that is, they're not going to be hearing what you're saying, because they haven't finished their conversation yet. Their conversation is still going on in their mind, and they're thinking, why is this guy interrupting me? I wasn't done yet. You've got to let them talk it out all the way, fully through. That's the hardest part right there. So get yourself a case of laryngitis. As we titled this here, the best conversationalist is the one with laryngitis. And I was actually going to title it, if you want to win the conversation, get yourself some laryngitis, because you don't want to be doing the talking. And the perfect story I'm going to get to, the very first story in the book here, is actually about a guy who had laryngitis at a particular meeting. So we'll get to that in a second. But this whole strategy here, this works on your teenagers too. That's going to be story number 2. Researching your opponent and getting them started to reminiscing. That's story number 3. And letting them do their own arguing inside their own mind. That's story number 4. Okay. So let me real quickly run through the first story here, which, like I said, this is to get yourself a case of laryngitis, right? So here's this one of the largest automobile manufacturers in the United States was negotiating for a whole year's requirements for upholstery fabrics. And there's this very important, 3 important manufacturers had worked up fabrics and sample bodies. These had all been inspected by the executives of the motor company, and notice had been sent out to each manufacturer saying, on a certain day, a representative from each supplier would be given an opportunity to make a final plea for the contract. A representative of one manufacturer arrived in town with a severe attack of laryngitis. He says, when it came my turn to meet the executives in conference, Mr. R said as he related the story for one of my classes, he says, as it became my turn to meet the executives in the conference, I had lost my voice. I could hardly whisper. I was ushered into a room and found myself face to face with the textile engineer, the purchasing agent, the director of sales, and the president of the company. I stood up and made a valiant effort to speak, but I couldn't do any more than a squeak. They were all seated around the table, so I wrote on a pad of paper, gentlemen, I have lost my voice. I am speechless. President stood up and says, I'll do the talking for you. And he did. He exhibited his samples and he praised their good points. A lively discussion arose around the merits of his goods, and the president, since he was talking for me, took the position I would have during the discussion. My sole participation consisted of smiles, nods, and a few gestures. He says, as a result of this unique conference, I was awarded the contract, which called for over 500,000 yards of upholstery fabrics and an aggregated value of $1.6 million, the biggest order I had ever received. And he never said a word during this entire meeting. The president did all the speaking for him. He says, I know I would have lost the contract if I hadn't lost my voice, because I had the wrong idea about the whole proposition. He said, I discovered quite by accident how richly it sometimes pays to let the other person do all the talking. That's a really powerful, powerful thing. And like I said, this works for your teenagers too. Story number 2. This one talks about, he says, letting the other person do the talking helps in family situations as well as in business. He says Barbara Wilson's relationship with her daughter, Lori, was deteriorating rapidly. Lori, who had been a quiet, complacent child, had grown into an uncooperative, sometimes belligerent teenager. Mrs. Wilson lectured her, threatened her, and punished her, all to no avail. So one day, Mrs. Wilson, she said that, I had just given up. Lori had disobeyed me and had left the house to visit her girlfriend before she had completed her chores. When she returned, I was about to scream at her for the 10,000th time, but I just didn't have the strength to do it. I looked at her and I just said sadly, why, Lori, why? And Lori noted my condition and in a calm voice asked, do you really want to know? And I nodded my head, and Lori told me. first hesitantly, and then it all flowed out. Said I had never listened to her. I was always telling her to do this or that. When she wanted to tell me her thoughts and feelings and ideas, I interrupted with more orders. I began to realize that she needed me, not as a bossy mother, but as a confidant, an outlet for her confusion about growing up. And all I had been doing was talking when I should have been listening. I never heard her. She says, from that time on, I let her do all the talking she wanted. She tells me what's on her mind, and our relationship has improved immeasurably. She is, again, a cooperative person. I mean, it's just amazing. You let the other person do all the talking, and they'll talk themselves right into exactly what you want. Number 3 goes into researching your opponent to get them started reminiscing, okay? This story goes, a large advertisement appeared on the financial page of the New York newspaper calling for a person with unusual ability and experience. Charles T. Cubulus answered the advertisement, sending his reply to a box number. A few days later, he was invited to call for an interview. Before he called, he spent hours in Wall Street finding out everything possible about the person who founded this business. During the interview, he remarked, I should be mighty proud to be associated with an organization with a record like yours. I understand you started 28 years ago with nothing but desk room and one stenographer. Is that true? So here he's asking a leading question to this person. And here's what Dale Carnegie explains about this question. Almost every successful person likes to reminisce about his early struggles. This man was no exception. So see, he asked a question right there to get this guy talking, reminiscing about how he got this business started. He started talking for a long time about how he started with $450 in cash and an original idea. He told how he fought against discouragement and battled against ridicule, working Sundays and holidays, 12 to 16 hours a day, how he had finally won against all odds until now the most important executives on Wall Street were coming to him for information and guidance. He was proud of such a record. He had the right to be, and he had a splendid time telling about it. Finally, he questioned Mr. Cubulus briefly about his experience and then called in one of his vice presidents and said, I think this is the person we're looking for right here. Cubulus had taken the trouble to find out about the accomplishments of his prospective employer. He showed an interest in the other person and his problems. He encouraged the other person to do most of the talking and made a favorable impression. I mean, this is all big stuff here. You get the other person talking about these things, and they're just going to go on and talk themselves right into what you're trying to do. The last one here, the story number 4, is let them do their own arguing inside their head, right? Roy G. Badley of Sacramento had the opposite problem from the one that I just explained. He listened as a good prospect for a sales position, talked himself into a job with Bradley's firm. This is what he says. He says, being a small brokerage firm, we had no fringe benefits such as hospitalization, medical insurance, and pensions. Every representative is an independent agent. We don't even provide leads for prospects as we cannot afford to advertise as their larger competitors do. So Richard Pryor being the prospective salesperson, had the type of experience we wanted for the position, and he was interviewed first by my assistant, who told him about all the negatives related to the job. He seemed slightly discouraged when he came into my office. I mentioned the one benefit of being associated with my firm, that of being an independent contractor and therefore virtually being self-employed. As he talked about these advantages to me, he talked himself out of each negative thought he had when he came in for the interview. Several times it seemed as though he was half talking to himself as he was thinking through each thought. At times, I was tempted to add to his thoughts. However, to a close, I felt he had convinced himself. very much on his own, that he would like to work for my firm. He says, because I had been a good listener and let Dick do most of the talking, he was able to weigh both sides fairly in his mind, and he came to the positive conclusion, which was a challenge he created for himself. He has been an outstanding representative for our firm. I mean, that's just big, big stuff right there. He next goes into, there's one more story here I want to run through real quickly. We got plenty of time here. He next goes into, this French philosopher named La Rochefoucauld. I think that's how you would say this. I don't know. La Rochefoucauld. He said, this French philosopher said, if you want enemies, excel your friends. But if you want friends, let your friends excel you. He says, why is this true? Because when your friends excel us, they feel important. But when we excel them, or at least some of them, will feel inferior and envious. This is a very, very powerful thing right here. Did I make a note on that? Yeah. Story number 5. Let them do the boasting, and only you do your boasting when and if they ask. And here's a story to back that up. Henrietta G., by far the best liked placement counselor in the Midtown Personnel Agency in New York City, was Henrietta G. It hadn't always been that way. During the first few months of her association with the agency, Henrietta didn't have a single friend among her colleagues. Why? Because every day she would brag about the placement she had made, the new accounts she had opened, and anything else that she had accomplished. Here's what she says. I was good at my work and proud of it, but instead of my colleagues sharing my triumphs, they seemed to resent them. I wanted to be liked by these people. I really wanted them to be my friends. After listening to some of the suggestions made in this course, I started to talk about myself less and listen more to my associates. They also had things to boast about, and they were more excited about telling me about their accomplishments than about listening to my boasting. Now, when we have time to chat, I ask them to share their joys with me, and I only mention my achievements when they ask. Principle number 6, let the other person do a great deal of the talking. Powerful, powerful stuff. When you're talking with a seller out there and you're trying to tell them all the benefits of why they should be selling you the property, right? They're not listening. They don't care about all that stuff. They got all these things going on in their head while you're talking. All this stuff's going on in their head. All they hear is like that Charlie Brown adult teacher, wah, 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 wah. That's all they hear. So you got to be able to craft your questions for these people in a manner that's going to get them to answer their own questions. One of the things that I wish John was on this hangout today, because he talks about going into a sales meeting with a seller, with a potential seller, and planning to run this meeting for 1 hour. And he says during the first 45 minutes, or for the first 30 minutes, basically, I basically just talk to him about stuff, whatever, not the house, things that they seem to be interested. If they have a pet, if they've got trophies on the wall, if there's, pictures of family, whatever it is, picking something out that they seem to be interested in and getting them talking about that first of all. So that's kind of breaking the ice, breaking them down, getting them to like you, making them feel comfortable with you, making them feel like you like them and that they can trust you. That's the first half hour. During the next 15 minutes, they'll discuss the property and the contract and the offer. So 15 minutes, here we go, boom. Here's the deal with the house. we've looked at it, yada, yada, yada. This is what our offer is. Here's the contract. Let me show you the contract. We'll run through the contract here. These are the blah, blah, blah. These are the terms, yada, yada, yada. This is how it works, blah, blah, blah. This is what we'll do, et cetera, and so on. Bing, bang, boom. And then for the final 15 minutes, he's going to let them, once again, do all the talking. So in the beginning, a few questions, which they did all the talking once again, because he's just asking a few questions to get them talking about something that they're very, very interested in, and letting them loosen themselves up and feel comfortable because they're doing all the talking here. And then for a 15-minute interruption, he'll throw in the the offer, the house, the situation, the contract, all of that. We'll take 15 minutes out of this hour, and then for the final 15 minutes, and if this takes another half an hour, that's fine too. If the meeting goes an hour and 15 minutes, that's okay, as long as they're the ones doing the talking. And this is where we bring up their objections, and it's right at the very end of the contract. The very first question, obviously, is there anything here that doesn't make any sense to you, or that you didn't fully understand? What questions or concerns might you have? And get them bringing it out. I mean, it's, and one of the questions that a lot of times that you might get is, well, I got to talk it over with my spouse or something like that. Obviously, first of all, you want to avoid that in setting up your appointment to begin with, because you want to make sure that you have all decision makers in the room at the time when this happens. So that's a question that hopefully you've already avoided. But if that's the case, I've got to talk this over with my spouse. Well, what do you think your spouse's concerns are going to be? Let's get that going. Let's get that question going. Can we get them on the phone? Can we get them here right now? When can we be in the room together? Because you're not going to be able to present everything the way I presented it and be able to answer all their questions for them. But another question that they, whatever question they might have, that's the whole situation. Is you're there right now. You're there to answer their questions for them. But here again, the big trick is to answer their questions basically with another question. For instance, they would say, well, I don't really understand this whole piece about, how, you're going to pay all the costs. I don't understand that. And I'm going to get, this amount of money, but there's other things that have to be paid. How much money am I going to get ultimately, right? Something like that. That's a legitimate question. Okay, well, great. Here you go. Let me show you real quickly. Run through this real quickly. This is the total amount. Blah 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 blah. Now, does that make sense to you now that you're going to receive X amount of dollars when this is all said and done, and everything else gets paid for? Do you understand how that works? Could you repeat kind of how I just said that, and let them repeat that to you, so that repeat that to me, so that I know that you're clearly understanding what I just told you. So get them to repeat something. That's a great way to get them talking to start with, right? You may notice something while you're going through your contract, let's say, where they had a confused look on their face, and you might bring something up. You might say, when I got to that one part, you guys seem to be a little bit confused about the blah blah blah, and was there some questions that you had there? Oh, well, yes, blah blah blah. Well, yeah, we didn't really understand how this and that works. Oh, okay. Well, if this was to go this way, how would that work out for you? And they'd be, oh, well, that would work out because blah 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 blah. But okay, well, if it was to work out that way, then how would that work out for you? Oh, well, that would work out blah 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 blah. Okay, well, which is the better way then? Oh, well, then blah blah blah. That's the better way for sure. Okay, very good. Yes, see, now they've just come to your way of thinking, because they've just now chosen the better way, which is the way you want them to go. A lot of little tricks here, guys. And I tell you what, this book right here can make you a master at, I don't like to use the word manipulating, but it is. I mean, it's mind manipulation of people. But it's obviously, you're there, at least I hope you are. Our business, we're there offering solutions to people who are in troubled situations. So our way of thinking, obviously, is the best way for them to go. We know that. We've looked at the situation. We've created great offer here for them that really is the best way for them to go. So now we just have to get them, we just have to win them over into that way of thinking that, yes, what you're presenting here is the best way for me to go. Where do I sign? And like I say, you're going to do that. You're going to have the most success doing that by just asking them the questions that is going to get them doing all of these things in their own mind. I'm going to run through it one more time. You're going to ask them these questions that's going to encourage them to express their ideas fully. And you're going to ask those questions by listening intently and sincerely to what they're actually saying when you ask them the first question. You ask them that first question, they're going to start talking. Listen to what they're saying, okay? Don't just wait for them to finish their answers so you can go on to the next question. If their answer to your first question isn't clearly getting them over to your way of thinking on the answer to that question, then ask them another question to continue that conversation even further until they get to the right way of thinking. Let them do all the talking. Let them tell you a thing or two. Let them tell you what's wrong with something. And no matter how much, don't interrupt them, okay? Don't interrupt them. Your objective, as I said, is to not do the boasting. Your objective is to get them to do their own arguing inside their own head. That's the whole thing. Let them have the argument and the conversation up here in their own head, not between you and them. Let them have the whole thing right in their own head, and they, you just lead them towards the rationale of your way of thinking. Let them do the rationalization of it. You don't have to tell them why this is the best way for them to do it. Let them come up with why it's the best way to do it, and boom, you've got them signing on the dotted line. So that's a big, big secret there for you guys. Big, big tip, big, exciting way to sit down, negotiate with a seller, and get those contracts. I hope you guys really enjoyed this show today. This is a NEWOPDAY on, like I said, May 23rd. And we'll be back here. I do want to apologize for not being here on, when was it? It was Freedom Friday I wasn't here, I don't think. Yeah, I just totally spaced it. I don't know, was I here Freedom? I don't know, whatever it was. I missed a day the other day, but I apologize for that. But yeah, it's one of those days when I just woke up and had things going on, and the next thing I know, I looked up and it was like, oh, it's Wednesday. What time is it? Oh, crap, it's already 9 o'clock. I missed the hangout. So I apologize for that one. But things happen like that. Fortunately, we work in an industry and a business where we have freedom to do the things that we want to do when we want to do them. And unfortunately, I wanted to do the hangout. I just was doing something else that I wanted to do, apparently a little bit more. So you guys have a great day out there. Think about this. Go buy yourself a copy of this book. Read this thing. Study. Learn how to work with people, and you're going to find a much bigger success ratio than you will any other way in trying to, get wholesale real estate deals and land contracts and flip deals and make money. So with that, I'll end the way we always do with the Napoleon Hill prayer, which says, "O universe, I ask not for more riches, but for more wisdom, with which to make better use of the riches given to me at birth, consisting of the power to control and direct my own mind to whatever end I might desire." Everybody have a great day. Make it a great session this week. I hope you get lots of contracts. We'll be back here on Wisdom Wednesday for some more awesome insider information.